Hey y'all, I'm your host, Aaron Smith of the Offshore Marine Service Association. Each Friday, I'll bring you the Offshore Briefing, a quick rundown of the week's notable developments, updates, and news you need to know in the offshore space. Whether you're on deck or at your desk, we're glad you're here. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Offshore Briefing. For once on Offshore Briefing, we're coming to you with cameras on, and that's because in addition to my lovely co-host, Ashley Angel, we have a third host as well, or a third person joining me, and that is Chuck Centore, my good friend Chuck Centore. It's great to see you, Chuck. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me. I've been looking forward to doing this for some time now. So finally, glad that we were able to connect.
Took a little while, but we were able to connect.
It did, yes.
Aaron, you forgot to also mention that we're coming to everyone for the first time in our new office.
Yes, we are in our new office. We hope to have a picture, maybe a picture on the wall by next week, maybe even two. We'll see how things go. And I also want to say, I know the first episode of our interview with Dan came out this week. And I hope everyone has listened to it. It was a great episode. Even despite the fact that he's a graduate of Loveland High, my high school's rival. So even though he's from Loveland, it's still good to have someone from Colorado on the podcast here. But, after that, I just want to say, Chuck, thanks again so much for joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience here?
Yeah, I know you said you didn't want to introduce me, and I know you hate doing that, but I hate introducing myself as well. So, but I will try to do as good a job as possible with, give the audience at least a little bit of background in detail here. So graduated from New York. I don't know that I would say that too loud where I'm from down here in Houston, but graduated from New York Maritime College. It's actually located there in the Bronx, just underneath the Throgs Neck Bridge. Graduated with an undergrad in marine engineering, as well as my third assistant engineer's license, which I never sailed on. I had to sail to get it, but never sailed on it. The reason is because I actually received a commission in the United States Navy. I got into the Navy nuclear power program. I was actually a submarine warfare officer for 6 years. And then actually I did my short tour at the National Security Agency, funny enough, doing nothing to do with submarines. I think that was by choice on my behalf. I was actually recruited by the NSA on one of the missions that we had. We had the NSA on board on one of our missions there in the Far East. And then they said, hey, why don't you come do your short tour at the NSA? Yeah. So I was actually in the counter-narcotics, counter-organized crime division. And of course, that has a lot to do with anti-terrorism efforts. So did that for 2 years, and then they had to make a decision on whether or not I was going to go back as a department head on a submarine. My son was born, just as soon as we got to Maryland, and decided I did not like the 80% up tempo for raising a family. So I decided to go to corporate America. Yeah. Interviewed with a lot of companies, ended up selecting Shell Oil. I was in their project management division, offshore construction. And my op tempo, so essentially travel went from 80% per year to 50% per year, which for me was a huge improvement. So I did quite a few projects for Shell all around the world, from Philippines, Alaska, Singapore. And so I did that over the next 4 to 5 years. Decided that the company was pretty big, and I maybe wanted something that suited my op tempo, and so I decided to become a contractor. Went to a company called Grand Isle Shipyard, and became an asset manager. Helped them start up their engineering group. Was an onshore asset manager for their onshore oil and gas business up in Pennsylvania and Ohio. And at the same time, I actually started a marine risk management business. One of the things I did at Shell Oil was I got the pleasure of working for a gentleman named Suman Mudasetti, and learned a lot about station keeping and dynamic positioning and risk management. So I ended up starting up a parallel division while I was at GIS, got a contract with Shell, ended up having to move back down to Houston so that I could focus on that particular division. It was about that time that I got really involved in the Marine Technology Society Dynamic Positioning Committee, just as a contributing member. the division was subsequently acquired by the company Gate Energy, which is where I've been since 2013, and I now run our project management and execution group, still managing as part of that the dynamic positioning and risk management group here within Gate Energy. And since the time that I was started out as a contributing member within the MTSDP committee, I'm now the vice chair of the DP committee. I'm the conference chair, and thank God I have finally shed at least one of my duties, which was the workshop co-chair that I shared with Adam. So yeah, that is my bio in a nutshell.
Well, that and so many interesting factors there. And one that I always remember is that both you and Ashley's father, or
Mhm.
stepfather, were submariners, as I like to say.
I
And I
bet
know you're.
he's extremely smart and very good looking. Yeah.
And I remembered, Chuck, I think we didn't we invite ourselves to some basketball game with him, Aaron?
Yes,
And we
yes, we
took my
did.
dad.
Yes.
Yes. He was a nuclear engineer from the Naval Academy as well.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but we wanted you to the last of the hats you described was the hat I wanted to talk to you about today, and that is the Marine Technology Society DP committee and their dynamic positioning conference.
Hmm.
That's going to be happening next month, and I want to talk to you about that. And you said you're conference chair this year. Congrats on that. And I couldn't think of anyone better than Adam to be handling the workshop there. But just before we get into that, Chuck, do know that Ashley's sole role on this
Yeah.
podcast is every time we talk dynamic positioning, she just yells nerds at us.
Yes.
Hmm.
So that is going to happen. So just be aware that that's going to happen, and that's
Yes. Sorry,
that's what
Chuck.
she's here for.
Yes.
That's what this episode
Uh,
is for, though.
So should I just log off now?
no, we need someone. We need someone to abuse us nerds.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
what you're
well,
here
it's
for.
funny she didn't yell it when we said nuclear engineering, and
Because
I
that's
think that
cool.
it is cool. It is cool, and dynamic positioning is cool too. And I think one of the things that drew me to dynamic positioning is just how complex it is.
Yeah.
A lot of DP systems, so we'll just dynamic positioning means DP, or DP means dynamic positioning. So DP systems are as complex, if not more complex, than a lot of nuclear power plants and space shuttle systems. And
Yeah.
so I think that level of technical complexity. Where Aaron's at, there's a lot on the human performance side, cognitive system behaviors that play into how we actually manage safe DP operations and make sure that we have, incident-free outcomes.
It is so cool, and it is so complex, and my little squirrel brain only pretends to understand a tenth of it, and leave the rest to experts like you and engineers like you. But tell us about the conference in general, and then specifically this year's version of the conference, because I think it's one that I spend my time and my money to go every year that I can. So
Mhm.
explain why it's important.
Yeah,
And remember
certainly.
to say the
So
dates.
yeah, certainly. Yeah. So the MTSDP conference is an annual conference. I believe this is the 27th year that we're having the conference. It will be on from October 13th through October 15th, and so it's a 3-day format. October 13th is a Monday. That is traditionally the day that we have the workshop. The Tuesday, Wednesday is the 2-day technical program, and that's where we have 4 sessions per day of great speakers, of which you guys, as Angel is speaking this year
On a
on,
Wednesday.
yeah, she's giving a statistical review of assessments that the OMSA has been collected on the,
Can I
what
insert
is it,
nerd now?
Angel? You certainly can, yes. Uh, but I actually have it up here in front of me because I want to make sure I got it right. But it's just this OMSA is presenting on a statistical review of assessments using data to identify opportunities for industry improvement. And so
Yes.
that's in our human performance session on that Wednesday. And so certainly people can register. Just go to the MTSDP 2025 conference website. That's all you got to type into Google is MTSDP 2025, and it should come up, and then you should be able to register. On those date, that Tuesday and Wednesday, we bring in as we were talking about, it's a very technical program. Traditionally has been a very technical program. And so you'll
Yep.
find people that'll be talking about artificial intelligence, data centricity, how we're using mesh networks, something for all the nerds to nerd out about. But what we're finding is equally important has been the human performance side.
Yeah.
And actually, last year, the theme of the conference, and every year we like to have a theme. So last year's theme was actually on human performance. I was lucky enough to actually cold call Dr. Sidney Decker and have him be our keynote speaker. And then I
He
don't
was
know
really
those.
good too.
He is a world's foremost authority on human performance, and so we're kind of carrying that theme forward. Where I think more and more of the topics that we give are going to be on human performance. So we're not going to neglect that. I think it used to be that we would have one session on human performance, and it
Hmm.
would mostly be around lessons learned. I think more and more we're delving into the behaviors and the cognitive science behind how we get the most out of our people when they're operating these very complex systems. I think, Angela, I was telling you about one of the speakers is Asher Belkin from The Ohio State University, and he actually is a professor in our cognitive systems engineering group. And so you're finding that there is this kind of marriage between humans and systems. It used
Yeah.
to be that systems were very analog. People could take action, and they knew what their response was going to be. Well, along comes, artificial intelligence and machine learning applications, and you're removing the human from the loop. And so there's this whole new set of risks that we have to study, that we have to know about, and that we eventually have to manage. And so he's going to talk a lot about resiliency and the safety of DP systems. And I had the opportunity to actually sit in a workshop with him. And you would think that actually adding AI and ML would make systems safer. But the truth is actually the opposite, that to get resiliency out of a system, you need to actually have the human in the loop, at least until AI gets to a point where it can provide the resiliency necessary. And I don't want to get too much into the engineering and the cognitive system science behind that. We can, but we don't have to.
I'm I mean, that concept, and not to talk about it, but that makes total sense to me just from a practical standpoint, and having watched our assessments happening both in simulators and
On the
offshore,
system.
Mhm.
because you can have the best designed system that incorporates all of the AI, machine learning, but if the guy at the sticks doesn't know how to use all of that and how to integrate that and to know just when to let the AI take over or when to let the machine learning take over and when he or she has to intervene, it can all get thrown out. And so I could totally see that as being something that sounds safe and looks safe on the laboratory bench, but is not safe when we get offshore. So that would be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think, and I haven't seen his presentation yet, but my hope is that he kind of addresses the differences between reliable systems, robust systems, and resilient systems. And too
Okay.
many people are using those as synonyms when they're
Yeah.
in fact different. And so a reliable system is one that where you design it and it does exactly what it's supposed to do during normal steady state operations, right? So you say if I
Yep.
want 99.9% uptime during normal steady state operations, the system can achieve that. So it's a reliable system. A robust system is where the system can survive perturbances that you have designed and tested for. So if you have some type of ad hoc, so if you're looking at an electrical distribution system and you're talking about having electrical ground fault, that the system can actually ride through that particular perturbance, right? So you've designed it and you've tested it for those perturbances. And if it does those things, then it's considered a robust system. A resilient system is when you have a perturbance that you haven't necessarily tested for or designed for. You may have simulated, but you haven't necessarily tested for it,
Hmm.
that the system can survive those perturbances. Now, this is when you get so far outside of your normal operating conditions or from a perturbance that the system could fail. Now, the way that a system recovers from a perturbance like that is something called adaptive capacity. And this is where you think that a system that has AI or ML integration into it can survive that perturbance because, well, AI and ML will know what to do. And the truth is like I said, actually they don't. Those
Yeah.
systems aren't necessarily trained. And so what you need is a extreme amount of what's called adaptive capacity. And what the studies have shown is what gives systems the most adaptive capacity is the human brain, because AI and ML have not yet surpassed or reached that level of adaptive capacity. So when you're looking at a system, having humans there who know what to do in that situation to bring the system back into its operating conditions before it fails is critical to adding resiliency. So when you have a system that can do that, it's considered a resilient system.
And that's really interesting. I think hearing that, I think that based upon what I've seen so far from Angel's presentation, I think her presentation will dovetail very well into that and will provide maybe some interesting counterpoints there from the data we've had from our assessments. And I know that we have contracted with a data analyst out of Texas A&M. Um, Sorry to all of my fellow Louisiana fans, we couldn't find a good LSU person, so we had to use A&M because they're a member company, really. So and I know that Colonel Fossum listens to this, so he's going to get upset for me with saying that, and that'll be fun.
But that's
Um,
one of the things I love most about the conference is it really is about thought
yeah,
leadership. And so a
yes,
lot of it is it's based in empirical data, empirical analysis, good statistical analysis, right? And then even on the softer subjects, when you start thinking about like psychology and
hmm
cognition, all of that still it's not a pseudoscience. It is actually a science with empirical data that people are studying. And that's the kind of thing you can expect when you come to the DP conference, which is different. Particularly our conference, the MTSDP conference, because we are a all volunteer organization. We're a nonprofit. We don't have any financial incentive. We're not trying to sell
no,
anything, market anything. It really is based on purity of purpose. And so the thoughts and the ideas that are brought there in this open forum are not trying to steer. They're just trying to present the data, let the chips fall where they may. We're trying to minimize the amount of selling that somebody may have, which is, I think, kind of what
yep,
happens at a lot of other different types of conferences where there is this kind of financial incentive to get, and not when I not just talk to designers, but also you had mentioned that, there's this policy. So there are a lot of policymakers there, whether they're from a class society or they're from a coastal state regulator, trying to influence them one way or the other. The idea is that our conference is meant to just say, based on the data, based on what purity of purpose, this is probably the best solution for managing whatever that particular risk exposure is, whether it has to do with human performance or it has to do with managing a design aspect of it or some operational aspect of the system.
and that's why I love this. And I would also add that it's not one to your first point, and I really think that as a fan of this conference, this is the most important factor to me, is that it is not sales pitch after sales pitch. These are hard research papers, good presentations on actionable technology and lessons learned and stuff you can implement. And that's what I do love and I've served as technical chair for the conference. And so I've seen the process of having those things where it's like, that's a sales pitch. I know that's a sales pitch. And if they don't reform it, we can't have it on our stage. And I do like that, so that when you go to this conference, it's actually about making our industry safer. And I would also add that it's not just, the flag states or the class societies, but it's also the policy that's being set by the leaseholders and the operators, because they set their policies based upon what comes out of this conference. For all of our Mariner listeners that are listening, I'm sure they've heard of an ASOG. This is the group that developed ASOGs, activity specific operations
Mhm.
guidance. That's where those things come from, is this. So if you want to know what's going to happen next with ASOGs or whatever the next risk or decision support tool is, come to the conference and see. And I do love also about this conference that there are active practitioners that are there. There are DPOs that are there.
Mhm.
There are surveyors that are there. And I think that's a really cool part about it too.
Yeah, you brought in an interesting point that, although we're focused a lot on dynamic positioning, the traditional non-dynamic positioning, station keeping part of the merchant marine could benefit from this. You
Yep.
just got to look at the Francis Scott Key Bridge collision, right?
Yeah.
Which was just a traditional. I don't know if it was a cargo tank or a container ship or whatever it was,
Yeah.
but
Box ship. Yeah.
box ship, and you saw that there was tremendous amount of consequences there. And actually, I think there was a couple of losses of life with that bridge
Mm-hmm.
collision and the
Mm-hmm.
subsequent bridge collapse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what I would say is that yes, the system that we focus on is dynamic positioning, but the learnings and the ideologies and the philosophical ways in which we handle that risk exposure from this complex system are very much applicable to other non-DP systems. And we look at that, and we do that already. We already apply those to
Yeah.
tugs, right? So non-DP tugs when they're doing their operations. We look at vessels that get moored. So the shallow water modus that have to get moored. So you're already seeing that it plays out. Would I love for it to go into the traditional merchant marine? Absolutely, because I think that they could look at their cross connections and where they might have single point failures or they
Yep.
lack any part of what we call the seven pillars for managing station keeping risk. So yeah, everybody's welcome to the conference, and I do believe that I would be hard pressed if you sat through every session that there wouldn't be something for somebody to take away and implement in their business immediately to make it safer.
Hey, I completely agree. Are you going to? I know in what I've also loved about the conference is, well, and it's no surprise that as a technology focused conference, that y'all have integrated technology so much. But I know that y'all have really done a great job of using the Hova app to really get. Sometimes we've all seen this. We've all been in the conference, time for questions. Everyone has a great question, and someone asks, the first person that hands up asked a dumbass question that just does not take the room where everyone else in the room wants to go. The Hova app takes that out and lets you crowdsource what question's going to be the best questions. Are you going to be using that again this year?
We are, and as a matter of fact, we've already renewed the subscription for next year. It's been a tremendous value add platform for us to go into
Yes.
the 21st century. I do feel like we're getting more and more of the functionality out of it. Yeah, so we will be using it again, and I think that to your point, we're able to mine for the gold while putting the chaff to the side and not let some of the louder voices overtake the conversation and actually make it a lot more uh, pleasant for even those folks that might be more shy and internally reserved, so that they can offer up their
Hmm.
questions, even in
Hmm.
an anonymous format if they wanted to.
Yeah, and Jeremy Bailey tries to quote unquote win the Hova contest every year at the conference. I don't think anyone else is playing except Jeremy Bailey.
Other people are
So
playing.
I think yes. Well, so Jeremy has definitely taken it to the extreme, but I think that has ignited the fire in probably about five or six other people to
Yeah.
also take it to the extreme. And I love it. And this year, we're going to look at giving out an award for that first place.
Oh
Hopefully there
gosh,
won't be
that's
any
scary.
cheating involved, but yeah, but
Angel, don't come back without that.
Well, last year was my first year and I was in the top 10, so I was close.
Hey,
And the app also, it gets everyone engaged as well because
mhm,
not
it really
only in
does.
the session that you get to ask questions, but there are other things like other topics that people talk
Hmm.
about, ways to meet other people, things to do outside the conference. So the app is good just overall, just getting everyone engaged.
And we've noticed that demographic shift. We've noticed the demographic shift
That's good.
coming for quite some time, and so it was time for us to also to kind of revise the format, maybe not in drastic ways, but do it in ways that they cater to that new demographic come in, because we do have a sustainability problem, not just in our industry, but I think across a lot of supporting industries, and so we really do need to make it more welcoming for the younger generations, make sure that we're engaging with them in the right ways that they want to be engaged. I don't think that we're going to move away from the face-to-face format. I know that we had at one time talked about do we have a virtual platform as well, but
No.
It's not the
just
same.
yeah, just know that we are trying to be progressive, but we're not trying to overdo it either.
I think you all have done a great job. And yeah, I've always seen, I was long, long ago, I was a new voice at the conference, and I know I felt welcomed. And, I know from the first time, as you say, Chuck, Asfa DePa, presented at the conference, it was welcomed, and it gave us a platform to really improve our DP certification system and get it accepted by the industry. So I've applauded y'all for accepting those new voices, and now Angel will have the privilege of presenting as well. So good luck to you.
Well, I love it. And then when I saw her at the conference, I said, "This is it. This is that new generation that's coming in. They're going to be long-term staples of the conference." Getting back to just the topics that we talk about, we're always evolving because we know that the challenges are they're not getting less, they're getting more. And so
Yep.
one of the things that you're going to see is this kind of emerging theme, and it has been emerging theme. It wasn't just how we're using DP systems in different industries, like the emerging offshore wind industry,
Hmm.
the offshore mining, where people were doing subsea mining
Yeah.
for the nodules and stuff like that. But you're also seeing we're looking at the uh, uh, climate impact, so the greenhouse gas impact of the systems that we operate. So now you're trying to say, okay, how do I operate this complex system safely, which traditionally has been open your high voltage buses and eliminate all of the other cross connections between, medium voltage, low voltage,
Hmm.
position reference sensors, right? And so then you have redundancy groups, and you said that's how I'm going to manage my station keeping system for maximum safety. And that still may be the right answer for some vessels, but what you're
Yeah.
looking at now is that comes with a cost, and that cost is actually you consume more fuel.
Hmm.
To be able to achieve that level of safety. Well, now we're trying to say, let's go to instead of going to open bus redundant concept of redundant groups, let's actually look at how do we operate our system with closed bus, right? And then achieve a level of single fault tolerance. And so that comes with a whole. That's really been the evolution over the last couple of years. That's going to be a big focus theme for this year's workshop, as it was for last year's workshop. But then you start to consume less fuel, you run the equipment less, et cetera, and you ultimately reduce the greenhouse gas footprint. And because the theme of this year's conference is leveraging DP to deliver on business objectives, and business
Yeah.
objectives are not always just financial in nature. Although you could say that being a good steward of the environment is ultimately a financial impact. You could say that safety ultimately is a financial impact. So we're looking at station keeping, managing that risk exposure holistically, and not ignoring these new and upcoming challenges and just saying, well, we've always done it this way. This is how we're going to continue to do it.
And I think that's from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective, and also, I think you kind of just glossed over this, is also that maintenance perspective. Yeah, if you're running 4 generators all at 18%, they don't really like to be run like that. You're just chugging along, you're just causing damage, and you're going to have to be replacing and fixing them sooner. So that's a very good thing. I hate to give him credit for this, but I do like that in 2012, John Flynn once told me, or said at a conference, "Oh, I heard there was a presentation about closed bus versus open bus. I'm glad we're still having that old debate." So that's 13 years ago, and we're still having the open bus versus closed bus debate. So good. And Ashley will define what open bus and closed bus are for us here. So,
Yeah. Sorry, my speakers aren't working.
Yeah, I learned very early on, as being part of the just going to the conference and then subsequently becoming part of the DP committee, was in the military, you learn not to talk about religion or politics, and then you could start adding things to that list, like don't talk about open and closed bus, uh, you know, tiebreakers. That you added that to the list, and But anyways, yeah, it used to be a pretty hot topic, but I think at this point we have given people a roadmap, right, with that joint development project that we did with Occamp and IMCA and
yeah,
others, right? So
yeah,
we put out that single fault tolerant JDP document. We've given people a roadmap on how they can actually go and prove single fault tolerance, and then allows them to operate in a optimum configuration. Um,
Yep.
You know,
And optimum in so many different ways too. So I do like that. Well, Chuck, thanks so much for joining us this week for the offshore briefing. And it's like I said, this is a conference that I've always supported and that we support. And I'm excited about Angel's paper at it this year, and I'm excited about the conference. And just kudos to you for being involved in the industry and submitting so much of your time to improving the safety of our shared industry. That's very important. And I don't think that you and Suman and everyone else who's been involved in this party are given enough credit for the safety improvements that they have made to our shared space. And so kudos to you, sir.
thanks. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me. And then hopefully you'll have me on at some other point in the future to talk about some other topic that you might be interested in. So
And
happy to participate.
you got some
Absolutely.
fascinating stuff that you work on, so would always love to have you on. So thanks
Yeah.
so much for joining us, Chuck. And thank you to all of our listeners. If you like this, and please, we're going to have in the show notes a link to the conference, also on all of our social posts that we'll use to promote this episode. We'll also have a link to the conference. Please go and register. It's going to be a great show this year. So thanks so much. Appreciate everyone, and please be safe.
Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of Maritime in America. We're proud to highlight the voices and stories that keep the American offshore industry strong. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us, and remember, the course ahead is shaped by those who step up and steer. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your crew. Tune in every Friday for your offshore briefing, and don't miss our next full episode, dropping soon with a very special guest's mariner's perspective. Catch you next time.